All right, so now that we're officially connected to MongoDB inside our server, the next thing that we're going to do is take a look at how to convert over our endpoints. So the first endpoint we're going to do this with is our load endpoint, our read endpoint, whatever you want to call it. Basically the one that our client loads all of the to-dos from. Now, since we've already inserted the to-dos into the database, all we need to do inside this endpoint is use this DB that we've connected to basically make a correct DB query to MongoDB. All right, so here's what this is going to look like. We're going to start off by removing this response.json thing, right, since fake to-dos no longer exists anyway. And in its place, what we're going to do is say const to-dos equals await, and we're going to use this DB thing now to basically make the same kind of queries that we saw how to make inside the Mongo shell. Now, these are going to look a little bit different than the queries that we made inside the Mongo shell, but that's just because of how the Mongo driver in Node.js actually works. So just keep that in mind. Now, the way that we do this, we're going to say db.collection, and we have to specify the collection name here, which is going to be to-dos. Okay, so that's the part that's different from the shell. We would have just said db.todos inside the shell. And after that, we're going to say find. And as the criteria here, we're going to pass an empty object like that, okay? So essentially that will give us all of the documents inside this to-dos collection. So now that we have our to-dos, all we need to do is send those back to the client by saying response.json to-dos and save that. And it looks like we have a Babel parse error. And the reason for that is we used await inside this callback function without making the callback function asynchronous. Okay, so we're going to need to do that to all of these. So I guess I'll just go through and do that in each of these right now. So we'll say async, async, and async. And let's test this now. Okay, so we should see that our server is listening on port 8080. Let's go back to our front end, and we're going to need to probably run that as well. So we'll say npm run start, hit enter. And it looks like we got an error saying todos.map is not a function. So what that means essentially is that the to-dos that we're sending back from the server are not actually an array. Okay, now I will admit that I forgot about this, but this is a great thing to troubleshoot. Let's try logging out the to-dos that we're sending back here to see what it is we're actually sending back. Or better yet, we can actually go into our browser, go to the network tab, and take a look at what data we're getting back in the response. So this is a very important troubleshooting skill when you're doing full stack development. Basically, when we go into the network tab, we can find the exact place where we loaded the to-dos. Here it is right here. And we're going to click on that and take a look at the response. And what we see is that for some reason we're getting back this events and events count thing, which is not at all what we want. So there is a reason behind this, and I'll just tell you what it is. Basically, when we use this find function in MongoDB, in order to actually convert it into an array that contains all of the data that we inserted, we just have to say .toArray and save that. It took me a while to figure that out the first time I started working with MongoDB. I couldn't figure out why I wasn't just getting the to-dos back. So anyway, we should be able to go back to our front end now and refresh this and see that our to-dos are successfully displayed. And these are being loaded from the database and sent back to our client, right? These are not fake in-memory database anymore, as we can see by the fact that if we restart our server, okay, and we'll just restart it on purpose, we're going to see that those to-dos are still persisted. Now, creating to-dos won't work right now, and also marking to-dos as completed and deleting them won't work either, and those are things we're going to take a look at shortly. But for the meantime, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.